Bienvenidos, Fright fans! Welcome to the horror show. I am Jaime and Fuego, and I'm here for a special presentation of the horror show that is covering the second film that we got to see, or I should say I was the only one that got to see it, at the fall showcase of the International Horror and Sci-Fi Film Festival, which is a sub-branch of the Phoenix Film Festival. So shout out to Montiazzi for giving myself the opportunity to check that out, and for our entire team to also check out Sadako vs. Kayako, and one of my favorite films of the entire year, which was Brian Bertino's The Monster. So yeah, very similar to last year, the second film that we were shown in the three-night series was Missing Link, regrettably, and ironically this was actually from the same production team that did Bite that we saw last year, which was like kind of body horror-esque, and I guess this is in a similar vein. It's a film called Let Her Out.
Miss, you've been in an accident. You've suffered a massive head trauma. What I'm about to explain may be hard to believe. It's not a brain tumor. This is far more rare.
That's when the blackout started. 1 minute I'm in one place, the next I'm somewhere else. It's like I'm sleepwalking.
Just stop!
Come home, I can help.
No one can help me.
I don't remember anything!
Since your accident, the mass has been growing. That's putting serious pressure on your brain. Have you ever heard of something called vanishing twin syndrome?
I can feel her growing inside me.
It's a Canadian film. It very obviously worships at the throne of Cronenberg, and it had a very unique and cool concept. It was about a bike courier woman who essentially gets into an accident, and upon said accident realizes that she has a Siamese twin that apparently in the smallest proportional size is inside her skull. Yeah, so never fully developed, just kind of immersed into the rest of her body, but this is like a real serious and legitimate thing that happens to people. And so as the story goes on, you realize that she's having these blackout moments and she is not remembering things that she's doing, which includes, you know, banging and killing and all of these different things. And so as far as storyline goes, I felt like the concept was awesome and yet just a missed opportunity. This was not a good movie. It was visually better and acted better than Bite. They also did Bed of the Dead and a few other films, Antisocial and its sequel, I believe. Cody Callahan is the director. But yeah, once again, a squandered opportunity for a very original, you know, kind of storyline. And so the film starts with a girl who is very obviously a whore, who is living at a small, just run-down motel, and she's got her business coming through and whatnot, and then after the doors are closed for the day, there's a very mysterious, just kind of scary-looking dude who just emits an ominous presence who comes in and rapes her. And you realize that that is actually the father of this girl who has the, you know, twin inside of her brain and whatnot. And so dark, just, I guess, beginnings to her existence, obviously. And so, once again, cool ideas, but the execution was where things were lacking. The story wasn't bad as she descends into madness and, you know, the blackouts become more frequent and stuff like that, but it was really, as I segue into the casting and the acting itself here on the horror show, that things were just not where they needed to be. The protagonist's best friend is really not very consoling and supportive. Like, she tries to be, but she's an actress pursuing theater and whatnot, and so she's done, I mean, 1 minute she's there for her friend, and then the next minute she's talking smack and, you know, all this other stuff. So I think maybe that's just, you know, understandable human nature, where you don't really grasp the extent of how bad your friends have it, or, you know, what they're going through, because you've got your eyes on the prize and you're focused and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, she goes back and forth between being receptive and supportive to just saying, oh, you're trying to get with the guy that I like, the director, and blah, 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 blah. And goodness Lord, the director, despite being a man after my own hair, he's man-bunning it. He is a chump. He is a bastardo. It was one of the worst characters in the entire film. I understood his motives, you know, because the lead character is a babe, but without getting too spoilerific, the way that he goes after her and the way she, I guess, reacts and so on, it just didn't really work very well for me. I thought the performances were bland. When it feels like acting as opposed to just natural storytelling, that's where, like, the red flag goes up immediately. And so, yeah, the acting, unfortunately, was one of the biggest problems in Let Her Out because of the fact that amazing concept that you're not doing the best with, and then when you have these actors that are giving these wooden, hollow, just kind of, not on-point performances, it's unfortunately not going to help things. We always like to cover an aspect of the effects here on the horror show, and that was one of the few things that they did do intriguingly. The practical effects, just like in Bite, were good. They were gross, they were slimy, they were off-putting, as they're supposed to be. However, it just didn't gel well with everything else that was transpiring, and so they almost stuck out like a sore, broken, bloody thumb of sorts, as opposed to just really driving the narrative forward, because of the fact that you're like, oh, this grossness, here and there, but it was so sporadic and didn't have the proper plotting behind it that it was more so just kind of showing off as opposed to servicing the narrative, which is what you would totally hope for in this sort of film. Now, the score was actually one of the high points that I must admit. It was minimalistic and not overbearing, and yet it was a cool kind of synthiness that, we saw in films like It Follows and various others. I know that the throwback is a big-time trend within horror right now, and, at the age that I am in my early 30s and loving the 80s and 90s stuff much more so than a lot of newer things, it spoke to me. It was cool, but yeah, once again, this film in its entirety worshipped at the throne of Cronenberg and yet just did not deliver cool concept and lack of execution, unfortunately, and especially with the ending. It was just goodness lord, without spoiling too much, you kind of get the feeling that things are not going to end very well for this protagonist, even if she doesn't necessarily deserve it. Unfortunately, the most horrifying situations are often ones that we find ourselves in with no justification. There's no cause and effect. It's just horrible things happening to people who don't deserve it. Those are really the most frightening essences of horror for me. And you do sympathize with her, but in the same right, the plotting, I just keep coming back to the flaws within this film. It was not bad, and a step ahead of Bite, I would say, which we saw the previous years I previously mentioned, but nonetheless just not that good. Check out Let Her Out if you think this concept intrigues you. Even if the execution was poor, as I previously mentioned, there is still just a good-looking film. The shots of I'm not sure where in Canada they filmed it, but it looked good. Some of the body horror stuff was cool when it was transpiring, but it just didn't go to the levels that I wanted it to, and it didn't really milk the concept the way that I felt that it should have. And so those were its detriments, and hey, it just is what it is. But I have to extend a grande gracias from the entire horror show family to Mr. Montiazzi and the International Horror and Sci-Fi Film Festival. They are already gearing things up for their April full-on showcase. This was just a little, halfway there type thing that they do in October. So once again, thanks to Monty, gracias to my co-hosts Susie, Cecil, and Marsha, who did not get to check this one out with me. Yeah, I guess they were spared once again, although The Greasy Strangler, the one that they were spared from previously, I think is one of the best films of 2016. So Let Her Out, unfortunately, was not. But I urge all of you guys to check out TeePublic, which is where we have all kinds of merchandise and cool stuff, from the Coexist shirts that you have seen us previously rocking here, to all kinds of cool things from mashup artists and horror visual creators, I guess, that we can also vouch for on our site. So jump to that link below and make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this video if you dig some of the coverage. And until next time, Fright fans, remember, stay scared.
Do it, man. Stay scared. Do it. Stay scared and go see this movie.